Hello and welcome back to another episode of Neural Flow, where I'll be taking you through my journey as a reimagined engineer. My name is Dan. I spent many years as a software engineer, and now I'm really rethinking how can I make AI the center of my new engineering process. And what I'd like to do is share a bit of my journey with you tonight. So tonight we're going to focus on a couple of features in GitHub Copilot, one of which is called custom prompt files, which is a way for us to create a templated prompt that can describe a number of actions or tasks that might be performed, and really rerun that prompt over and over, changing parameters to do repeated tasks. Very, very handy, very, very good way of doing things like repetitive package upgrades. Great at following a set of predefined steps or tasks that you define in the prompt. An example of a prompt file is this here. So a prompt file is just a markdown file. It can either be in your repository, your workspace, in the .github/prompts folder. It has a file name of star.prompt.md, and you can see I've got a create specification one right here. So this particular prompt, if we look at it, is designed to create a new specification file for a solution optimized for generative AI consumption. Now I use this particular prompt for looking at a piece of my code base, creating a specification from it, or alternatively, if I'm creating a new feature or function, I describe that function and then get this prompt to create a new specification for it. Now, specification files are very formal. They're well structured in a way that really resonates with me. You might have your own preferences. But the interesting thing here is I can also give prompt files access to specific tools. So I can say, these are the tools you're allowed to use. In this case, I've used pretty much all the built-in ones. If you're not sure which tools you have, you can look down in your chat mode and click the tools button and you'll see a large number of tools here. These will depend on the MCP servers you've got installed and the extensions that you've got installed. Some tools are provided by extensions and they will start with the extension word. Others that are MCP based will start with MCP server. Easy. But in this case, we can actually configure these tools in our prompt file by clicking the configure tools and turning the ones we want on and off. But we're not going to worry about this. We're just showing you how it works. We can also parameterize our prompt files, which means that when the prompt file is run, the agent will attempt to populate these input variables, and there are a number of them, which we'll show you to the documentation in a moment. There's a number of them which will control how this prompt is executed and provide input into the prompt. Some of these are things you can define. Some are things like the current file open or the current code that's selected. All of that is really well documented. But in this case, I've created a prompt to create a specification, and it is very specific about what it creates. And in fact, it has an example template of the sort of specification I want created. It's given full examples around requirements, structuring of requirements, what I want it to look like, formats, everything. And I can show you an example of what this prompt has created. So here is an example of running this prompt file on one of my existing parts of my code base, which is a semantic model repository. You don't need to worry about what that is. But as you can see, it's created a full specification for me, which I can then use to evaluate against my own code base to say, am I missing anything? It's also a good way of documenting what's in the code base. I can also use this to create diagrams or even change this specification and then use that to get Copilot to build new code or other developers to build new code to meet that specification. It is my preferred mechanism of development, always starting with a specification. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is these prompt files. So let's run a prompt file really quickly. So how do we run them? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to press Control-Shift-I to bring up our chat panel, which I'd already brought up, our Copilot Chat. Pressing Control-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I will automatically jump you to agent mode. And to activate one of these prompt files, we just press /. Now you can see I've got a few available, and we're going to talk about some of these suggest ones in a moment. But let's just do a create specification, and we'll talk about, I'd really like to create a specification on the data let me see. I'd like to create a specification on the connection manager. On the connection manager class. The reason why I'm doing that is I know I've got a few, not a few bugs, but I know I've got a few areas of my code base in the connection manager, which I really would like to improve. Now I could go straight in there and start coding. Of course I could. But I like to have a specification just to help me understand what does this currently look like, and then I can start having a bit of a conversation with Copilot around what might I improve with this? Is there any gaps or any problems? So this might take a few seconds, but it is going to produce a specification in the specs folder or spec folder down here. And that is because in my prompt file, I was very clear about how do I want to name this, where is it going to be put, and how is it going to be structured. This saves me a lot of time. I could have tried or written that by hand, but of course I'm going to forget it. I could have, of course, stored it as a text file or markdown somewhere and copied and pasted it in here, but that's a very inelegant way of doing this. But while this is working, I'm also going to mention, how do you get these large prompt files? Well, that is actually the second part of the discussion of today that I'm going to show you. It's a bit inception here. We're going to show you how to use a prompt file to find and download prompt files from open repositories. Now, there are a couple of repositories out there. There is one created by GitHub just in the last couple of weeks called awesome-copilot, and I'll show you to that one. I actually have my own as well, which was created around the same time, and I am contributing all my prompts into the awesome-copilot repository just so that we get everything in one place. But I wanted to make it really easy to go and get these. So that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. But in the meantime, we have now got our specification. It's still being built out. As you can see, it's quite a long one. I have quite a lot of requirements. It has identified a number of key elements, key areas, and you can see the little square dot means it has been changed. But let's go and open that up again. And it's still doing last checks. I see it's looking at dependencies. It hopefully won't be a few more moments before it's finished this. So here it's given us a summary that has completed our specification. Now this is a really great asset that we commit to our repo. We keep up to date with our application. And in fact, we use it to write our code, or get Copilot to write our code. So I'm going to keep this. I'm going to assume it's right. We don't really have time to go into the detail. I, of course, normally would check through this and make sure, A, it's correct, but B, my understanding of it is correct. That's really important. I need to understand this. It's not just computer generated. So we've now got our specification. Let's go and implement this. We could just send Copilot to go. Actually, let's do something else. Let's see if there are any problems with this specification that could be improved. I in fact know there is, but I need a chat mode to help me do this. Now, we haven't talked about chat modes. Of course, when you open up GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code, you have three chat modes: Agent, Ask, and Edit. But you can actually create your own custom chat modes. Now, these change the behaviors. They have built-in grounding. You can specify the tools that these chat modes can use. It's like being able to create your own agent with a persona, a set of tasks and awarenesses and references to files that it will use whenever you're talking to it. It's a great way to really change the default behavior to be, say, a senior C# developer, or perhaps a DevOps engineer persona, or something is just there to challenge your assumptions, a critical thinking persona. But I'm going to use a mentor because I want to actually have a look and decide, is there any problems with my specification? So how do I get one? So the easiest thing, well, I was going to say, the previous way of doing this is to jump over to one of these fantastic repositories. So this is the GitHub Awesome Copilot repo. I will share the chat we'll share this link in the video notes. But as you can see, they have a link down to custom instructions, which we're not talking about today. I think they're fairly well known. They've got reusable prompts. Those are the prompt files, the instructions, basically the tasks, or the predefined templated prompts. They've got the custom chat modes. They actually don't have the one I'm after. I want one called a mentor mode that I created. And of course, you could create your own. I highly encourage everyone to do that. But if you just want one that you know already exists or you've found handy in the past, I'll show you how to go and get it. So you can also go to my repo, which I'll share that link as well. This is my GitHub Copilot Assets Library. Very similar structure. I have tried to align and structure with the Awesome Copilot because I am migrating all my content over there. But as you can see, there's a mentor mode, which is help the engineer by providing guidance and support. There are other modes that I could use here. For example, the principal software engineer is another good one that will sit there and really challenge specific patterns. The expert.NET software engineer is another one. And I could use the install to VS Code button, and that will install that VS Code, that will install that prompt into either my workspace or my repo. But I'm going to do this a different way. I'm going to switch back to my Visual Studio Code. Let's head back over here and let's get rid of this. We'll make this full screen. If I had just done it the other way, copied and pasted or installed it, I might see the prompts in, actually I'm the wrong repo, aren't I? I might see the prompts in these files in the .github folder, chat modes. I might see some additional files in there. But what I'm instead going to do is I'm going to create a new chat. I don't need the specification open anymore, so I'll close that. Don't need that either. Might as well close everything. We will type /. Now you'll notice I have 4 other prompts in here. Suggest awesome GitHub Copilot chat modes, suggest awesome GitHub Copilot prompts, and suggest GitHub Copilot chat modes, and suggest GitHub Copilot prompts. Now these are prompt files I have downloaded and put in my user folder, so they're available to me in every Visual Studio Code instance. So this is how I like to download these prompt files and chat modes from those libraries. I don't want to have to jump in there because perhaps I'm in a Python library and a Python repo, and I want to download, I want to ensure that I've got chat modes for Python, or I've got prompt files that are relevant for Python, maybe running specific linting and rough testing that I prefer. But in this case, I want a mentor chat mode. So I'm going to go to this suggest GitHub Copilot chat modes. And I'm going to say mentor. Now this will look through my repository and also look at what code I've got in here, packages and so on, and look at the chat modes that are available in that website. Remember this one over here that I shared, because I'm using the default one, it is using my library source. So hopefully we'll pick up that mentor. We all love it, deterministic demos. Sometimes things work differently. And I'm going to close that because that's the wrong one. Here we go. It is now looking at the repository content to decide what chat modes might be relevant. It's already got the list of chat modes. So this is what it's told me I've got in my repositories, a bunch of C#, .NET 9 stuff, fantastic, got semantic kernel. So it's suggested number one, mentor mode. But it's also suggested a few others, expert software engineer, C#, .NET janitor, implementation plan generation mode, that's a good one. I might need architect, there's a whole lot of stuff because I'm using Azure. You can see here, it's suggested one, Azure AV and Bicep mode, but that's already installed. So it said, don't worry, I've installed it. It's looked over here in my repo and seen that it's there. So I can now say, install the mentor mode, and maybe also the principal software engineer. Yep, cool. So it is now going to go off and copy or download those files. As you can see, it's got the raw file from my repo, and it's going to chuck it over here in the chat modes folder, I think. Or did I ask for a prompt file? And it's a chat mode. And it's also got the same principal software engineer, and it's going to go create both of those files. Now, of course, like a good GitHub Copilot, it will show that those files are new and changed, and I can accept those as is, or I can make changes to them. In this case, I'm not going to change anything. I know what it's basically just done a one-to-one download. You can see it's got the mentor chat mode in there now, and it's busily creating the principal software engineer mode. So we'll give that a moment to complete, and now it will say, I've done that, thank you very much, and we can keep both of those files, and those files are now available to us as new chat modes. So we've sort of inceptioned it here. We've used a custom prompt file to find another chat mode or another prompt file that might help us solve another problem. So that keeps us in the flow. You know, we don't have to jump out to another repository, don't have to go find it, click the button, did we install it to the right place? So now, if I look at my agents, I have got mentor. So I'm going to say, okay, great. I might start a new chat here, just to keep things clean. I'm going to say, can you check the spec data connection manager and identify any areas where this design pattern could be problematic, especially with red safety. We all know how important that is, and we all know how often we get it wrong. So I'm getting my mentor, which is really it's a chat mode, and if we have a look at the chat mode while that is running, we can see it's purely designed. You're in mentor mode. Your task is to provide guidance and support to the engineer to find the right solution. It will ask questions. It wants to make sure it understands the proposed solution. It wants to make sure you understand the proposed solution. It identifies areas of risk and problem. It's a great little friendly, helpful tool that helps you as you're building out your software, you're doing your design to make the right decisions. But in fact, it is, if I'm going to read through all this, it is calling out a number of problems. So primary thread safety concerns, serious thread safety issues. Agreed. I'm going to just quickly say, could implementing a factory pattern here improve this? I think it can. Always good to get a second opinion. Fingers crossed, non-determinism. Of course, it's a mentor. It's designed to challenge my thinking. Now, of course, in the real world, I'd have more time. You wouldn't be sitting here watching a video and waiting for all this to happen. So you would read through this carefully. maybe ask a few more discussions, have a few more rounds of discussion with the mentor, and really come to a solid implementation plan. So let's go and say, I want now to, you know what? I want to update the spec. So I've got another chat mode, update specification, update the data connection manager to implement a factory pattern. Now, again, this is an example of using a prompt which is predefined to really rewrite that specification with the requirements, but it's using the history of the chat. The mentor has actually told me, wait, hold on, which is great. I should really look at this and make a better decision on this. And it's really refused. So I'm going to switch out of mentor and going to just say, let's just go ahead and do this. Because mentor is right. There is a few other problems and issues that I think should be fixed. And there's better patterns we could use here. But it's going to rewrite this specification for us, which won't take too long. Let's go with option A, please. Again, terribly, don't do this in real life. We're only shortcutting for the purposes of this video. So we have now begun the process of updating our specification. So this will take a few minutes. Now, after we have got an updated specification, you might think, well, let's go get coding. But one of the things I found whilst the many months of using Copilot Chat and AI build tools is that trying to get GitHub Copilot or any of these tools to boil the ocean doesn't have a good result usually. It becomes too complex, too many things, too many balls in the air, too much complexity. It either stops or it gets into a loop. It just doesn't give you the code it wants. So I've always found, break the problem down. I mean, in the reality, when we as software engineers work on large problems, we always attack it as piece by piece. We break the problem down, small subtasks. We're going to do the same here. We're going to use an implementation plan. Now, you will notice, as this still works, I don't have an implementation plan prompt. I know there is one because I created it. Down here in my repository, I've got a prompt plan that says create implementation. Where is it? Implementation plan. One of these is the create implementation plan. That's the create. It must be this one here. Implementation plan update prompt. So this is the one. I just need to update the name of it. It looks like it's got a bit of a bad name there. But this is the prompt I want. So I'm going to install that via my previous method, my inception method, where I'm going to use the suggest prompt file. Right, I'm going to use one of these built-in prompt files. I still wait for this to finish. As it's rewriting a significant part of my code here, my specification. The other way I could have done this, of course, is sent this off as a GitHub issue and got this prompt mode to rewrite the GitHub issue in using a coding agent. So I could have signed it there, but of course it still would have taken time. These models are not magic. They do take a little bit of time to do their work, especially on large complex files like this. But this is really, again, why this implementation plan is important, because complex changes, there is usually a lot of work to do. using an implementation plan to break down the problem is a really good way of doing that. Now you could actually get Copilot to run through the implementation plan once it's created, bit by bit by bit, stage by stage by stage. And in my case, I put a table in the implementation document recording which parts of the implementation plan have been completed. I could, of course, have done this with GitHub code issues. I could have had the implementation plan create GitHub issues, which I could have then assigned to coding agents. But in this case, I'm just trying to be a little bit more pragmatic and demonstrate to you how I work in general on large code bases, large complex code bases. So here we go. We have finished. It's giving us a little bit of a wrap up, but it's significantly rewritten our specification to handle that option A factory pattern. I'm going to just keep this. So now I've got my finished specification. I really need that implementation plan. So I'm just going to quickly say, suggest Copilot prompts, implementation plan. And of course, once you've done this, say you've pulled a prompt into your repo, you can then use that prompt over and over. You don't have to pull the prompt every time it's stored in the repo. You could, I think there is some new features now in the panel where you can say configure prompt files, and you can copy an existing prompt file to a different location. So you might be able to copy one from, perhaps it's a create specification, and you use it across every application in every repository, and you don't want to store it in the repository. I think you can copy it or move it into your user workspace. I haven't tried that yet, but I'm sure that's how it was going to work. If you have tried it and you do know, let me know. Add a comment. So we've now been listed. Here's a bunch. The create implementation plan. That's actually the one I wanted. So, and I can actually click through, and this will take me through to the implementation plan prompt itself. So I can review this. So this is what my implementation plans look like or get created as. I've got very clear instructions on how I want this to be done. My implementation plans contain multiple phases, atomic phases with tasks. Each phase has multiple tasks, list things like dependencies and how we're going to test it and so on and so forth. So let's go and let's say install. Let's do it this way, see if this works. Install the create implementation plan. All right. Looks like I can talk faster than I can type. It's always fun in an office filled with people talking to Copilot. I think that'll be what's needed in the long term is Copilot with specific voice recognition. So it'll only recognize your voice when you're talking to it. But I can imagine it's going to get noisy in a room full of developers, all coding with voice. So it's going to, again, download my implementation plan. You'll see that appear in here. This is my create implementation plan prompt, which is what I just showed you on the screen before. It's telling me it's done. I can now use this prompt to create my implementation plan. So let me go and do that. So keep that. I'm going to say create implementation plan, but I'm going to say from the specification file, the data. So make sure the changes will work after each phase. Make sure the app and no breaking changes between phases. Now this is going to make sure that at each point my application is still going to be runnable. Its test is still going to pass, so that I can if I wanted to, commit between phases. This is really, really important. Large changes really shouldn't be spent, days and weeks making large feature changes. Really isn't the way to make large feature changes. Rather, we should be using feature flags, breaking our changes down into small deployable, individually testable chunks, and then enabling those with feature flags, or building our application changes in such a way that we aren't making breaking changes or changing the functionality of existing functions. We're just adding to or enhancing that function. So as we can see, the implementation plan is being built. It's actually going to go and look at the code for this. So we'll start to see in this folder here a plan. You can see I've created a few plans. I've got a plan here where I was upgrading a package that had a breaking change. So you can use plans for small changes like package upgrades, or massive changes, adding new features, or large-scale refactoring. In this case, this is a fairly large-scale refactoring. It would touch multiple parts of the application. So it's going to go and be a bit thorough. So, as you can see, it's still working on it. It hasn't started writing our plan yet. While we're doing this, I think it's important to call out that building these chat modes and prompt files, building them and making them reusable is a huge advantage to your team, to your organization. Now, every prompt file and every chat mode is not going to work for everyone. You should be customizing these for your environment, for your code base, for your setup, for your working style. There is no right or wrong way to do this. All I want you to take away from this is you can use these to enhance and increase your productivity significantly. But not only that, it helps take on some of the drudgery tasks that we typically just skim over. And when we're writing specification documents, we just think, we infer a lot of things, we assume a lot of things, we skim over a few things. Large language models don't. They will quite happily over-document. Yes, they can. You can get them to trim that down, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they will take care of so many tasks that we really wouldn't have time to do. And in fact, barely will we write a specification. We'll maybe have a few acceptance criteria documented in a user story, but that's really not much of a specification. And the specification can be used in so many different ways, or all these assets can be used in so many different ways. So now we've got our implementation plan. And as you can see, if we expand this out, we'll get rid of the chat. You can see we've got a whole lot of tasks. None of them are complete. We've got as the process or the agent works through delivering these changes, which we'll do in a moment, it will tick them off as they go. So we can watch it, we can keep an eye on it, we can actually stop. And at any point, it can continue on. So if it starts going in the wrong direction, or we decided actually that wasn't right, we really wanted to make it do something else, we can pause or stop it. So let's keep that. And we are going to now, I think we're ready to deploy, we're ready to build. So let's close all those just to get a nice clean screen. And of course, Control-Shift-I to open up our console. Now I'm just going to use plain old agent mode. Now you might have created a specific software engineering mode. I expect you might have done something like created some code instructions, which I'm not covering in here, but that's a way to control certain other default behaviors when Copilot is generating code. And I've already got my C#14 best practices in here. There are many others. You could actually implement the same process, the bootstrapping, the inception of getting a prompt file to download these instructions from those public repositories, because we've both been putting them in there. But let's go ahead and just say, let's start building the changes from implementation plan. What do we call it? Architecture database manager 1. All right, let's do this. So it is going to go ahead and start to make those changes. I have found it sometimes updates the process as it's going through this table as it goes. Sometimes it does it at the end of the phase, and sometimes it gets a little bit forgetful, and you've got to sort of say, hey, don't forget to update it. But either way, it actually tends to often pauses between phases for you. You can actually ask it in the prompt, hey, I want you to make sure you pause between phases so I get a chance to provide feedback. Another tip I also use is, hey, while you're building, if you have any questions or you're not clear on something, stop and ask and we'll review it. So as you can see, it's working on phase 1. Now, I could go and let this work and it would quite happily continue on. This may take 10, 15, 20 minutes. The other way I said I could have done this is I could have used a prompt to take each of these phases, create them as GitHub issues, and then assign those GitHub issues to coding agents if I had them. Now that would be a fantastic way of using coding agents. By the way, everyone who has got GitHub Copilot Business, I think, has now got access to coding agents. It does use premium queries from GitHub Copilot, and I think it also uses GitHub Actions Runner minutes, but it's still hugely valuable, something you can get just out of the box if you've got GitHub Copilot Business. I'm not going to wait for all this to finish because we'll be sitting here watching it and it's great, fantastic. Yeah, we're probably going to have to make a few changes at the end, but no problem. I'm going to stop it now because one thing I wanted to show you was, well, how do you, remember I talked about these 4 prompts, these suggest awesome GitHub Copilot prompts and the suggest. How do I get those in? So easy way is to open your panel. If you've got the latest GitHub Copilot extension along with it built inside this build, you can actually do this over here and go prompt files. So click the little cog up here, click prompt files, and you can do it that way, but I'm assuming you don't, so I'm going to do it. Panel, just type prompt, and you will see chat configure prompt files. And you also get new prompt file. So what I'm going to do is select new prompt file, and now I'm going to select my user data folder, and I'm going to call this suggest another GitHub prompt file. All right, now that is going to then open this folder. Now, I want you to then go over to my repository, which is this GitHub-Copilot-Assets library. I will share the link in the video description. But down here, you will find the suggest GitHub Copilot chat modes, suggest GitHub Copilot prompts, and I think those are the only 2. There is 2 more on their way, which I will have uploaded by the time of this video. The 2 for the awesome GitHub Copilot repo, so you can get prompts from there as well. So you go and click that to get the content of that, and we'll go to raw, get the whole file. Copy that, and we're going to have to do this once, paste it in there, and save it, close it, and now we've got another suggest, what did I call it? Suggest another GitHub prompt file. Now, that means that every new repo I open on this machine or using this workspace, using this user account, will have access to these suggest prompts. So that means that no matter which repo or which workspace I'm working in, I can go and grab prompt files and chat modes just by starting having that chat, saying, suggest a new chat mode that might work here. There are so many amazing and awesome things that can be done with chat modes and prompt files. it blows me away the power of these things. They are so much worth your time investing in, investigating, learning to use, building out custom ones for your personal use, for your company, for your team, for whatever. Please explore, please share, comment. If you've got any great use cases or built some chat modes and prompt files, go and contribute them to the Awesome Copilot's repo. That is where they're going to be accumulating many and many of these awesome different ways of using GitHub Copilot. Go and throw in there. There's some seriously cool stuff. I can't wait to see what people are going to do, especially when you start adding specialized MCP tools like SQL Database, the new SQL MCP tool, or whatever else is out there. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. And I'm going to say thank you again for watching. Really appreciate the time you taken to learn about how you can evolve your development practice using AI and really level up and become the next generation of AI-driven developers. Ciao. Thank you.